Apple just announced a bunch of new products over the past 3 days. So there are new products and there are some refreshes. But what's already interesting is to ask why Apple now needs 3 days to announce products. Well, it's simply that Apple now has a huge number of products and can't sum it all up in just 1 or 2 keynotes a year. I think the point of announcing this slew of products was partly to lighten the load for WWDC, which should be coming in June. What's also interesting with these new products is the economic context. First, Apple's economic context. Apple, as we know, is behind in artificial intelligence, but it's an excellent year for Apple in terms of its financial results. What's also very interesting is, on the geopolitical and economic level, the component crisis and all the inflation it causes in consumer computing, and that was the big question. How is Apple going to pass this inflation onto its products? Apple products already have a reputation for being extremely expensive. Are they going to be even more expensive than expensive? For the products I'm going to show you, I'm going to keep the specs brief. Because you're adults, you can find them on the internet. I'll try to leave a little more room for my opinion and some buying advice. Just to remind you, here I'm commenting on Apple's announcements. I don't have the products in hand. I wasn't invited by Apple to test them ahead of time, but that doesn't stop me from having an opinion anyway. We'll be like you, we'll buy the products when they're released. We won't buy everything, we can't afford it. Let us know what interests you in the comments. Before we start all that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sponsor of this video. And it's a very interesting sponsor because it's a product we use every day at NowTech. Let's be honest, right now artificial intelligence is like a jungle. One moment GPT 5.2 is the best. 2 weeks later Claude 4.6 takes the lead again. And then Gemini comes out with something crazy. If you want to stay up to date, you quickly end up with 80 euros in subscriptions per month. It's crazy. And that's exactly where our sponsor mammoth.ai comes in. Their concept is a single interface that brings together all the best artificial intelligence models. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Mistral, and many others, they're all there. And all that starting from 10 euros before tax per month. That's 12 euros including tax. The price is unbeatable. Mammoth.ai is really the perfect tool to switch from one AI model to another. And what's really cool is that you can compare one AI model's answers with another's while keeping the same prompt. But Mammoth.ai is also a matter of sovereignty. Mammoth.ai is French. They use language model APIs from the US, Europe, and China. But the entire environment and storage remain on servers that are in France. So your data is protected by the GDPR. All your requests, everything you do, is not used to train these language models. And by the way, at NowTech, we've switched to Mammoth.ai. We all have our own private Mammoth. You know, there's Jerome, there's Karina, there's Yanis. We also have a Mammoth that's dedicated to images, which allows us to work on our thumbnails. We also have a little editorial Mammoth that's trained to act as my researcher. It helps me a lot with video scripts. It allows me to work faster. Here, I'm showing you a little Mammoth that's designed for short-form content like what we do on Instagram and TikTok. And with this little Mammoth, I can give it instructions, pre-train it, make it a bit of an agent for a specific task. So I just have to paste the URL of an article and it gives me a summary and bullet points. And here I'm showing you, if I'm not very happy with the result, how I can switch, for example, very easily from Gemini Pro to Mistral. So a question you might be asking is how Mammoth.ai manages to offer such low prices. We asked them the question. The idea is to be transparent with you. Actually, it's relatively simple. When you pay, for example, 20 euros at OpenAI for ChatGPT, you're paying for a huge amount of capacity. Most of the time, you don't use it. Mammoth.ai, they buy this power in bulk and then they redistribute it to their users. It's pooling of resources. As a result, well, it allows them to offer a plan at Mammoth for 12 euros, including tax. And that's per month. And above all, there's no commitment. If you need more, they have plans tailored to your needs. For example, if you have heavy image generation needs, you'll find pricing that fits them. So if you want to try Mammoth.ai and stop collecting subscriptions, the link is just below in the description of this video. In any case, we thank Mammoth.ai for allowing us to bring you this video. And now let's get back to the latest Apple announcements. We'll start with the iPhone 17e, and as a preamble, I'd say that iPhones are really a category of their own. If I had to sum it up, iPhones are for people who don't usually buy iPhones. After quite a few years of hesitation, Apple has finally found the magic formula. It's still a new iPhone, but they're going to cut back on some components. It's a mix of old and less old parts to keep the Apple price in check. Just to be clear, it's still an Apple price. It's definitely not low end. So, in the case of this 17e, it's a refresh of the 16e. We have the A19 chip, like on the 17 series. But be careful, it's not exactly the A19 chip. It will have one less core than the 17, it will have two fewer cores than the 17 Pro. We also have the in-house C1X modem made by Apple. They're freeing themselves from Qualcomm. They've already put this modem in the iPhone R this year. It mainly allows smartphones to be much more efficient. But keep in mind, it's still 5G, of course. But we're on Wi-Fi 6, we're on Bluetooth 5.3. As for the screen, overall it's the same, and that's where things are a bit disappointing. We're still at 60 Hz, I'll talk more about it in my review. Regarding the single camera we have on this iPhone 17e, when you read the Apple specs, you think, wow, it's the same main camera as on the iPhone 17. Careful, usually in the E model, the sensor is smaller. That doesn't necessarily mean the images will be worse, but it does mean there will be more processing involved. The really good news about this 17e is the base storage. No more 128, we're going straight to 256. And the other really good news is the arrival of MagSafe. Last year, I was really annoyed with the 16e for not having MagSafe. For me, it's even more of an Apple hallmark than the Dynamic Island. By the way, just to clarify, you won't get the Dynamic Island on this version of the E. But be careful, it does have MagSafe charging. You'll have the feature, but it's limited to 15 watts. So it's slower than what we have on the iPhone 17 and the iPhone 17 Pro. As for colors, there are also a lot fewer options, black, white, and pastel pink, which I find nice. The price is 719 euros, and that's where we need to talk. Actually, you could say the price is virtually going down since the storage is increasing. You'll also see that this is something we'll find on a lot of products I'm going to talk to you about. Apple has leaned pretty heavily on capacity increases, which helps to soften any potential price increases a bit. This price is important because I know that many of you who are tech enthusiasts and know the market well will say yes, but in that case, it's better to buy a used 16 Pro where you can find it at the same price. Or maybe, wouldn't the iPhone R be more interesting because it's more innovative and you can find it for about 100 euros more? In short, you are informed buyers. And I really think that the iPhone 17e is not made for you. The iPhone 17e is really the iPhone. For someone who doesn't even want to hear about Android, they're not interested. They want an iPhone. They want it to be brand new with the maximum warranty. She wants the latest iPhone without paying the price of the latest iPhone. To sum things up a bit, it's for a mainstream audience that doesn't really care about 60 Hz displays. All that to say, the 17e is a good buy unless you already have the 16e. And it's a good buy for 90% of people who aren't interested in spec sheets at all. The second most notable product from this presentation, and that's no small thing because here we're dealing with a new product from Apple, is the MacBook Neo. And if I call it new, it's because it already has a new name, it's a new lineup, and I even think it's for a new audience. This MacBook Neo is really a game changer. It's literally the cheapest MacBook that Apple has ever made. You can get it starting at 699 euros. That's unheard of for a brand new MacBook. To reach that price, Apple has kind of reinvented what a MacBook is. Literally, it's an iPhone chip in a MacBook with an iPad screen. I'm simplifying a bit, but that's basically it. Be careful, that doesn't mean the screen is touch-enabled. That was just a rumor, it's unfounded. Actually, we'll see that when we talk about the specifications, but obviously Apple has really cut down to the basics. We have a very basic Mac. It won't cannibalize sales from the rest of the MacBook lineup, whether it's the Air or the Pro, but it's clearly a Mac for pure office work, for families, for students. We could almost have called it the Backbook. In terms of design, Apple went with a 100% aluminum chassis, kind of a unibody, passive cooling, no fan at all. We have the Magic Keyboard, but it's not backlit, and we have a multi-touch trackpad. The screen is a 13-inch Retina display. 500 nits, 1080p webcam, 2 microphones, 2 speakers that are positioned on the sides, but they're still compatible with spatial audio and Dolby Atmos, so it's pretty good for watching shows. Super lightweight, 1.22 kg. It's exactly the same weight as a MacBook Air. As for the chip, it's an iPhone chip. It's the 18 Pro 8-core CPU, 5-core GPU, 8 GB of unified memory. To give you a bit of a power comparison, according to the information Yanis is giving me in real time, it's roughly equivalent to an M1 chip. For battery life, we'll have 16 hours of battery life. As for connectivity, it's pretty basic. We have two USB-C ports. Be careful, one of them is actually the older USB 2.0 standard. We're not talking about Thunderbolt at all here. There's also no MagSafe like you can find on the MacBook Air. We have a mini jack port, but be careful, it can only display on an external screen. In terms of connectivity, it's not Wi-Fi 7, it's Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 6. As for the colors, they're pretty nice and they tell us something about the target audience. We have powder pink, yellow, citrus, silver, and indigo. As for the prices, be careful with the lowest price, something will be missing. You can get it starting at 699 euros, but it won't have Touch ID and it comes with 256 GB. If you choose the 512 GB option, however, you'll get Touch ID, but then it's 100 euros more at 799 euros. Note that if you have student pricing at Apple, you can get it starting at 599 euros. Where I say that it's quite a move by Apple is that even though we're not in Chromebook price ranges, Apple is still making a direct play for the student market. You really shouldn't underestimate the aura that Apple has in terms of brand image, even with a very young audience. And that price is still quite reasonable, knowing that on the Windows PC side, prices are clearly going up with the component issues we all know about. In any case, we've already ordered one to test it on the channel because I think it's a product worth studying to see what we can run on it. Can we do some light video editing? We'll give it a try. In this video, I didn't rank the products by order of announcement, but rather by how important I thought the products were. So I'm going to talk to you about my favorite Mac, the MacBook Air. You see, I have it here, but this is the M2 version. Apple just announced the M5 version. So we have an M5 chip, 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU with an accelerator in each core. So overall, faster on-device AI. It starts with 16 GB of RAM. You can go up to 32 GB. The base storage starts at 512 GB this year. But what's important to remember is that we'll have storage that's twice as fast. New M1 chip. What does that mean? It means Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 6. And that's excellent news for me. Very important to remember because the price is relatively reasonable, but on the other hand, you won't get a charger at all. You'll get the cable to charge, but you'll have to buy a charger. It's good news, bad news for those who want to buy a complete computer that you can plug in right out of the box. But where I think it's good news is that today you can find far better chargers than Apple's basic chargers, and at least now you'll have a choice. And then obviously if you already have a lot of electronic equipment at home, you probably already have plenty of chargers in a drawer. As for the price, the 13-inch version starts at 1,199 euros, so that's 100 euros more than last year. But the storage has doubled, so that's how you should look at it. However, be careful. In this 13-inch version, you'll have 2 fewer GPU cores, so keep that in mind. And then there's the 15-inch version. There you get all the GPU cores. And it starts at 1,499 euros. I've already told you in quite a few videos how much I like this MacBook Air. For me, it's my favorite Mac. It fits my work perfectly. A little bit of video editing, a lot of office work, sometimes I still need a bit of power, and what I like most about this MacBook Air form factor is its agility. I often call it the iPad of Macs. It's small, it's compact, it's easy to hold with one hand. I like the 13-inch version. You can't just write the MacBook Air off as just a small computer for office work, it still has some power. Here we still have enough to run small artificial intelligence language models locally. But if you absolutely have to put a label on it, I would say its positioning is for the occasional Mac power user, meaning you don't have the power of a pro, but it still has some power under the hood. But on a daily basis, you mostly have office tasks and from time to time some heavy image processing or big development tasks. What's really interesting about the release of this M5 is the effect it's going to have on the M series MacBook Air lineup. The M4 drops below the 1,000 euro mark. I'll put the Amazon link for you, and the M2, which is the one I have and I'm very happy with, drops below the 800 euro mark, not at Apple, but you'll find them on Amazon. But of course, if you're a video editor, photographer, or a developer handling demanding workloads, you need MacBook Pros. Well, there are new ones this year. Apple had already unveiled the MacBook Pro M5, but now we have the M5 Pro and the M5 Max. It's worth noting that one of the Macs will be called the MacBook Pro M5 Pro, which makes it the AN Pro. These are really quite customizable MacBooks depending on your needs. And one example of that is the RAM. You can push it up to 128 GB. Here too, we'll have SSD storage that's twice as fast. And just to let you know, it's really meant for heavy-duty work. In the M5 M5 Pro version, it starts at 1 terabyte, and in the M5 Max version, it starts at 2 terabytes. So you can see this isn't for spreadsheet work. Well, you could have some really big spreadsheets, you know. As for connectivity, we're moving to Thunderbolt 5. Well, not super important for external SSDs, but very important for managing external displays. Also, with the arrival of the M1 chip, we'll have Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 6. So even though we're not the most technical channel in the tech world, we're going to explain a little bit modestly how Apple did it with these new processors because they completely redesigned the architecture. They call it the Fusion architecture. Basically, to sum it up, it allows two circuits to be connected on the chip. Then there are stories about superconductors and words I don't understand. But overall, it's really powerful. I told you I'd do a technical paragraph, right? But be careful, there are more and more options. There are several versions of the M5 Pro. There are several versions of the M5 Max. To put it simply, there are versions where you'll have all the cores and others where you'll have fewer cores. In the full core version, you'll have 18 cores, 6 super cores, and 12 performance cores, and here we're only talking about the CPU. And Apple says they've never made anything this powerful. I mean, I wasn't expecting less, but they're claiming a performance gain of 30% more than the previous generation. All of this will, of course, need to be verified with benchmarks and tests. But it's on the GPU side that Apple has done most of the work. In fact, now we're going to have neural accelerators on every core. In fact, this will take a lot of load off the CPUs. And when it comes to running AI locally, it's going to deliver insane performance. Yes, that's a technical term, and honestly, it can be very interesting for gaming too, because we now know that artificial intelligence is used a lot for image generation. And I know that some of the old god will tell me, no, but Jerome, Macs are not made for gaming at all. I'm just pointing out that one of the big games coming out this year, maybe it'll flop, but Crimson Desert will be released on day one on Mac. Maybe it's still a sign that game developers are starting to take an interest in Macs. And that a computer like this, with a game that seems very benchmark heavy, could be interesting to test. And here, you'll notice my obvious wink to the accountant so I can get a MacBook Pro to play Crimson Desert. I swear, it's for work. Overall, another very noticeable improvement on this SoC architecture is going to be the improvement in bandwidth, in memory bandwidth. Since we're at 307 gigabytes per second for the Pro version and 614 gigabytes per second for the Max version. I forgot to mention the number of GPU cores on the Max version. You can go up to 40 GPU cores on the Pro version. You can go up to 20 GPU cores. What we can see is that Apple created this architecture to run Apple Intelligence perfectly. Unfortunately, Apple Intelligence itself is far from perfect. As for the prices for the 14-inch Pro, or rather the M5 Pro, it starts at 2,499 euros. But be careful, you'll be missing a few cores. For the 16-inch model, it starts at 2,999 euros, basically 3,000, and for the Max, for the 14-inch, it's 4,199 euros. Be careful though, with a few cores missing. And for the 16-inch Max, it's 4,499 euros. So these are professional prices. Don't forget, it's your boss who's paying. Well, I'm just saying, you have the right to buy them yourself, but you can also have them bought for work, put it down as a business expense. Anyway, I don't want to give you bad advice. I want to play Crisscross Desert and count it as a business expense. You're paying anyway. That's true, but I'm also the treasurer. Actually, I'm kind of torn. These MacBook Pros are still really interesting products because beyond mobility, since it's still a laptop form factor, you can feel that Apple is putting a lot of effort into making them. They're almost like workstations you can carry around in a world where we still need a lot of mobility. You can feel that Apple is putting more effort into these MacBook Pros than into Pro desktop computers, or they're miniaturizing them. What's also very interesting here is that it's happening in the context of a component shortage. When it comes to external AI services where we have to pay more and more for big servers, Apple is really focusing on local and on-device artificial intelligence. Are they right? Are they wrong? Only time will tell. Now we get to the iPad Air M4 here. It's really just a refresh. I've often shared my thoughts on the iPad Air. It's the most sensible iPad, in my opinion. A lot of things you can do on the Pro, you can also do on the Air, with a price that's still more affordable. So we have the M4 chip chip in this version of the iPad Air. I've often said that iPads have way more power than what we actually use them for today. Maybe tomorrow that power will be useful for something. I know that some graphic designers and some photographers need that power. There are a few iPad apps that need a lot of power, but those use cases are still pretty niche. We don't have an OLED screen. You know, that's really the exclusive domain of the iPad Pro version. We're still stuck at 60 Hz. Here too, promotion is reserved for the Pro. Both sizes are still available. You'll get it either in the 11-inch version or the 13-inch version. The front camera is 12 megapixels. It's on the proper edge either at the top or on the side, depending on how you hold your iPad. And of course, full compatibility with the Apple Pencil Pro. We've got the new chip, we've got Wi-Fi 7, and in the cellular version, we'll have the C1X. So all of that is pretty good when it comes to price. For the 11-inch model, it starts at 669 euros. For the 13-inch, 869 euros. I think it's an excellent value for money. Even people who work on iPad, I'm thinking especially of graphic designers or photographers, don't always need to pay that price or get that much power. The excessive power of the iPad Pro. And it's really great that Apple keeps this iPad Air lineup. It's more than enough for a whole bunch of things. And we'll finish with the product that I personally think is the most niche among all these announcements, which is the new Apple displays. I say niche because these are really displays that I find quite unique, especially in terms of price positioning. These are supposed to be very professional displays, but I think you're still paying a lot for the Apple design. For me, these Apple displays are almost a status symbol. For example, we work in video, so you might think we need good displays. We use good displays, but we still buy good displays that are much cheaper than Apple displays. So Apple is going to offer two new studio displays. The standard one, let's say 27 inches, 5K limited to 60 Hz, 600 nits, a 12 megapixel center stage camera with a new feature. The new thing is that it will be able to film what's happening on the table in front of you. The other new feature is that the ports are now Thunderbolt 5 ports. All of this is for the sake of cohesion. The standard starts at 1,699, which I find to be a very prohibitive price for a screen that isn't anything special. The real star is obviously the Studio Display XDR. It's replacing the old Pro XDR, which was bigger but also really expensive. Here, Apple has limited the size to 27 inches. We're talking about 5K here. The big difference is that now, the mini LED, which is what makes this screen so interesting, has 2,304 local dimming zones. It supports ProMotion at 120 Hz and has brightness that goes up to 1,000 nits in SDR and up to 2,000 nits in HDR. Sunglasses not included. Now, when it comes to the price, it's really steep. We're at 3,499 euros, and I haven't even mentioned the nano texture option yet. So it's kind of the ultimate monitor for wealthy Apple fanboys, or really for studios working on Hollywood film color grading who want their Macs to look super nice in the open plan office. One important thing to mention about all the products I've talked about, all of these products are compatible with Apple's polishing cloth. And that's still something worth noting. This Apple polishing cloth is the most durable and compatible product Apple has ever made. Yeah, no, you're right. Anyway, that's quite a bunch of products. Personally, I think the most interesting thing, apart from the iPhone 17, which is definitely getting a lot of attention, is really this MacBook Neo that stands out. It's the real innovation. And this Neo, if we look at it a bit more closely, it has real strategic importance for Apple. It shows just how much the whole strategy they've built over the past few years around Apple Silicon is a real success. It allows them to have a hardware ecosystem and to create a fully hybrid product with elements of the iPhone, iPad, and Mac, and in this way to adapt very, very quickly to the market and even to open up to new audiences. That gives them strong resilience credentials. It gives them, you could call it, a certain corporate sovereignty. They are becoming less and less dependent on external suppliers. The other thing to note about all these products is that during this period when component prices are soaring, Apple has still managed to keep prices relatively reasonable. And we're shifting into a somewhat crazy world, where Apple prices, which used used to be known as the most expensive on the market, are now almost reasonable. I do mean almost. Let's not forget the polishing cloth. I have no doubt that Apple has built up large stocks of components. Before the crisis, that gave them an advantage, but also their work on efficiency is paying off during the crisis. Apple still seems to be a brand that's very well positioned to grab even more market share in 2026 and 2027. Feel free to let me know what you think about all this in the comments. And since efficiency and sustainability are still important topics today in a world where everything in tech is getting very, very expensive, well, I encourage you to check out a video we made a few months ago, Why Doesn't Your Smartphone Last 10 Years? And we'll be back very, very soon with another video.